Okay, here is a break from the chaos of heaven and hell for an update on geological situations from the perspective of a descendant of the Titans. My background and basically status of authority on this subject comes from my skills and naturally developed abilities that tie my heritage to that of Cuchulainn, as when in a physical altercation I seemingly appear to grow in size. Various people have said I appear to bulk in overall size by at least a foot when charging at someone. Apart from that, I also have traits that tie me to the shadow wolf, Fenrir, as I can move through the shadows from one to the other. Also to that of Phobos. Whenever I engage strategically against someone, I have this innate ability to emulate someone's fears, even though I might have just met them and know nothing of them. I can somehow detect a person's fears and phobias and can manipulate their mind into illusions so strong they would swear they physically can see what is not there. Anyone who is a regular viewer of my channel can stand as a witness to that trait. Also, I hold the similar traits and skills to the more popular Titan Atlas, as I have a very keen empathic influence over geological states. So with my credentials on the board, let me explain a few situations that people may want to take notice to. If you have equipment that can verify any of this, I would suggest surveying the situations that I am about to mention so that a counter strategy and preparation can be set in place. First up is the situation we're in the core of the planet, which I shall crudely display here. On the diagram you should see the layers of crust and sediment leading into the core of the Earth, which I have been to in my Titan form once 2 years ago in January and again just here recently. Here on the chart you will notice a diagram of the core's details that lay below the layer of core mantle in the very center core of the planet, which is not liquid at all but rather giant fusion dynamo of various photon particles and X-ray gamma waves that fuse and collide in a thermonuclear type blender that is covered and concealed by this core mantle region that acts like a shell comprised of 2 layers. The inner layer is softer and more fluid-like. The second is thicker and resembles that of the surface of the Sun. Between these 2 layers are 2 major raw elements, iron ore and nickel. The density of the nickel is similar to that of mercury, globular, and usually centralized near the inner mantle layer. The iron ore is more solid though and floats in large chunks along the outer layer of the mantle core. From the you have a large open space between the outer mantle core and the solid rock sediment crust of the inner Earth. By estimate I would say at least a quarter of the distance from the surface to the sediment's firmament below the continental shelves would be a guess as to the distance in space between the core mantle and the solid crust. This is where the problem is. 2 years ago when I observed the core's situation, there was an issue of a lack of iron ore which was causing a displacement of the nickel deposit within the inner core, causing it to deform. These 2 elements and the friction that is caused by the rotation of the inner and outer core, which rotate in opposite directions, causes a gravitational build-up of kinetic electromagnetic resonance waves that spiral upward and become the Schumann resonance sound wave detected at 7.83 MHz and then continues up through the crust and into our upper atmosphere that energizes our magnetosphere shield that makes life possible on our world. This effect of opposing rotations is made possible due to the tidal lock of the Moon's orbit, which is synchronized with this process, which is held in place by our rotational orbit around the Sun, which in turn is also held in place by the rotation and total mass of the planets that orbit with us in our solar system around the Sun. All in a very delicate and complicated symbiotic balance. Now currently the recent observation done within the last month showed a large sunspot tumor-looking collection of some sort of solid mass forming along one region of the outer mantle. Also there was a large amount of electrical discharges occurring in various regions all around the space between the core mantle and the crust, similar to discharges seen in volcanic eruptions. What all this means I am not exactly sure, but if my empathic connection to the Earth's geological stasis is correct, I'm sensing that a major ejection of inner core pressure is going to be released to balance out the displaced nickel by dropping the sediment layer's roof into the core. vaporizing the elements unable to withstand the heat and pressure and forming new iron ore deposits from the residual leftovers and fusing them into the new necessary elements needed to balance out the iron ore and re-centralize the nickel into its position within the inner core. That is my best Titan-guided explanation of what to expect to occur. What does that mean for the surface? Well, as I understand it, a similar situation happened around 300 million years ago where everything on the surface sank beneath the waters of an ocean which had been suppressed around the firmament region. The collapse of that space forced the waters beneath the surface to suddenly become ejected from cracked regions around the world, shooting geysers of ocean water probably into the stratosphere before crashing back down onto the surface, which became suddenly sunken beneath the very quickly forming ocean, which most likely covered most dry land on the surface in a biblical Noah's flood tale type event.
Peter, Jude, Felix, Peters, Hoyt, Stefanes, Goyla, King.